and China. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to visit Japan for his 8th visit to the country. Along with his Japanese counterpart, Shigeru Ishiba, Prime Minister Modi will hold the 15th India-Japan Annual Summit on Friday. The two Prime Ministers will review the special strategic and global partnership between India and Japan, which includes defense and security, trade and economy, technology and innovation, and people-to-people exchanges. Apart from this, Prime Minister Modi and Japanese counterpart will discuss issues of regional and global importance in times of global tariff tensions. Meanwhile, the Japan-US trade talks scheduled for this week have come to a grinding halt as Japan's topmost trade negotiator, Ryoshi Akazawa, has cancelled his visit to the United States of America. Now let's understand why Prime Minister Modi's Japan trip is strategically so important. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said that the annual summit between the two countries represents the highest level of dialogue mechanism that exists between India and Japan. Not just this, Japanese investment is aligned with India's long-term priorities of Make in India, Digital India, Startup India, and renewable energy. This alignment gives the partnership greater durability. Japanese finances power metro projects in many Indian cities. Modi and Ishiba will travel to Shanghai, a city known for its semiconductors, in a bullet train. Among the topics on the agenda will be Japan's participation in future bullet train projects in India beyond the Ahmedabad-Mumbai corridor.
This is indeed emerged as an important pillar of cooperation between the two countries in recent years. There was a meeting between the defense ministers of the two countries that was held just recently in May of this year, where the two sides were able to review a whole host of issues, operational engagements between the two sides. There was a reference also to space. So the ISRO and the Japanese Space Agency are working together on something called LUPEX, which is the Lunar Polar Exploration Mission, and this is being pursued in tandem with India's Chandrayaan 5 mission.
India and Japan, we have excellent relationship. We have excellent political relationship, business relationship, and of course people-to-people connect. If you go in this country, any part of this country, you will see an India connect, any part of this country. So we have a very solid base on which we are building our relationship. 10 years back, in 2014, Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi and the then Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Abe, entered into an agreement, a special strategic and global partnership for India-Japan relationship. We have in the last more than 10 years working towards building that partnership, and we can see that there is significant progress in every element of that relationship.
As Prime Minister Modi embarks on his visit, the focus will be on platforms of global leadership, targeted Japanese investment in semiconductors, defense electronics, and rare earth technologies that can secure a shared technological future. Joint ventures in hydrogen, offshore wind, and battery storage can position both countries at the forefront of the global green transition. Building diversified supply chains will allow building of resilient trade architectures, while joint research hubs in AI, quantum computing, and robotics can anchor India and Japan firmly in the digital industrial revolution. India and Japan will also explore synergies on cybersecurity, trusted data flows, and setting global standards that ensure innovation thrives without compromising sovereignty. Beyond economics, the financial and human linkages need strengthening. Expanding yen-based swap arrangements and portfolio flows can create new sovereign financial choices. Language training, student mobility, cultural exchange, and industry-linked training programs for Indian youth in Japan can fuse demographic strength with industrial needs, forging a living partnership across generation. So, the larger question is, can New Delhi-Tokyo partnership buffer tariff standoff with United States of America? What makes India-Japan relationship unique? And on this, I'm joined by our esteemed guests, Ambassador Deepak Vora, former Indian diplomat, SC Garg, former Finance and Economic Affairs Secretary, Professor Swaran Singh, Center for International Politics, JNU, and Professor Rajan Kumar, Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies. Thank you all of you for joining me. Let me straight away go to Mr. Garg. Mr. Garg, we have had historical ties with Japan from Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, that's number one. And India not accepting the Treaty of San Francisco of 51, which actually ended the World War II for Japan, which got executed in 1952, because we believe that it compromises the sovereignty of Japan as a nation. But that is past. What does this visit in terms of finance, economics and trade, sir, hold for India?
See, the context for this visit is very different. We have had the Trump tariff problems. Japan has entered into a deal with Trump, but we have not been able to do it. So that is one very major sort of difference in approach about how to deal with the Trump tariffs. Secondly, we are in a way competing for retaining the fourth largest economy space. Japan is fourth, currently India is fifth. We are set to overtake. Japan is not growing for last 35 years. India has been growing. Whether we'll outpace Japan this year or the next year would be also an interesting dimension. The third thing which I think I would point out is that Prime Minister Modi and the Japanese leadership, especially up to Abe's time, had very ambitious sort of agreements and projects to work out. This Mumbai-Ahmedabad rail, high-speed rail is one such thing. I was party to those negotiations in 2018-19, when Prime Minister was sort of pressing the Japanese to make sure that this train comes to operate by August 2022. It has not been done, so it is already 3 years late. There's some more time going to take into this. So we have excellent relationships. Lastly, I think one more, the Japanese are a major investor in India, but Japanese are not very major sort of consumers of Indian products. And therefore, what is a surplus coming out from America is unlikely to be absorbed into into Japan. So in this backdrop, let us see how and what kind of solutions and forward linkages are brought into this visit.
Okay. Your opening comments, Professor Swaran Singh, how do you look at this visit, sir?
I think very clearly on the mind of Indian Prime Minister, and to great extent, I think also on the mind of Prime Minister Ishiba, will be the tariff challenge that is writ large. And therefore, when they are negotiating cooperation in various sectors of either trade or investments, I think they will be exploring opportunities where they can kind of, sort of increase trade in those sectors which are immediately impacted by the tariffs by President Trump. Second, both are also very clearly, entrenched in the regional security and stability, and see China as their shared challenge for almost, I think, 2 to 3 decades now. And the way President Trump is kind of assuaging the Chinese leaders by keeping them aside when showing his anger for India purchasing Russian oil could also be something that would come up for discussion as to if President Trump is kind of not really showing greater interest in either Quad or in Indo-Pacific in general, then what are the other ways where India and Japan can, of course, work together. And then several bilateral issues where, whether it is expanding the bullet train beyond the one project that we have to take it cities to connect, or other major concerns about artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and so on. Technology will be another, I think, area in general, if I have to say.
But
where
Professor,
both sides-
Professor Swaran Singh, you see, it is not something which can go unnoticed. The principal negotiator from Japan with the United States of America on trade has cancelled his visit.
Yes, I think those are the hiccups, and that is exactly what I'm underlining, which is so disruptive in international relations now, and which is where the old timers like India and Japan, who have stood together for almost 25 years now with regular summit meetings, as to whether they can ensure certain amount of stability and balancing. I think if you remember, Prime Minister is going to Tianjin from there, and how to make sure that the Quad is showcased as an entity which is not entirely America-led and will not be kind of singing American tunes, but would be looking at the larger regional security and stability. And I think that is going to be the focus at the regional level. And of course, in bilateral terms, technology transfers investments are going to be spoken of, and $69 billion is already in the reports.
Okay.
Is going to be on the table this time.
Okay, Professor Rajan Kumar, your opening comments quickly, sir.
No, I think, this is very important. From India's perspective, two countries are extremely important from foreign policy and geostrategic perspective. One is, of course, Russia, and the second one is Japan. And that's why you have the annual summit format with both the countries. It's very rare that, annual summit format where one leader goes to other country and the other leader comes to. So that shows the kind of importance that we attach to Japan and also to Russia. And India has made this point very clear so far as Russia is concerned. But now, because of the hiccups which have emerged due to tariff and repeatedly the kind of statements which are being made by Peter Navarro, Lutnick, and also President Trump. So that has pushed India to the other side. And there are concerns, as Professor Swaran Singh was raising, and that there are concerns about the Quad now. Quad was an important geopolitical convergence of interest between the two countries. But now the question comes, what is the status of Quad and how do you deal with China? And if India is trying to normalize its ties with China. So those are the issues which are very important from Indian perspective. But yes, economy, trade, tariff and technology, these are the important issues which will be discussed between India and Japan in the coming meeting.
Ambassador Vora, Ambassador Deepak Vora.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
How are you, sir?
Are you back from Leh?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. First of all, you don't need me. You have so many brilliant people. You have Ambassador Veena Sikri. She's a legend in the Indian Foreign Service, the best we've ever had. Let me just tell you, when I was in Leh, His Holiness was there, the Dalai Lama. And there was a massive delegation of Japanese. And they all came. It was a global conference. And the way these people spoke was as if in their previous births or their next births, they were Indians. And the kind of affection that I saw was quite amazing. And by the way, they're pretty savvy, even though they are monks. His Holiness was there, and some of his monks were saying, well, Prime Minister Modi is doing well. He's going to China, but he's also going to Japan. So if the Chinese fellow can come to India and go off to Pakistan, well, let's just show them that we too follow totally independent foreign policy, and this is not something that you can push India over. I went to Pangong Lake. You'll be amazed, sir. I've been going there now for 20 years. There used to be those little tents we would build over there because we were scared of what the Chinese do. Now we have permanent structures. We dare the Chinese to do what they want. Japanese absolutely love this. I mean, can you believe that some of the senior monks of His Holiness said, Shabash Bharat? I said, great. I mean, this is wonderful. Basically, sir, something to remember. When the Second World War ended, we were the only country that didn't ask for reparations from Japan. Senior Japanese remember that. They haven't forgotten that. And then, of course, all this technology stuff will all come in. The bottom line, I wonder sometimes when I'm lying asleep, and I love Japan, what would the Japanese do if McDonald Trump said to them, break diplomatic relations with India? When he imposed tariffs, they went on bended knees and said, forgive me, my lord. And then, of course, they got what they want. They're not assertive enough is my understanding. Of course, he is not going to do it. Therefore, this visit is one in an ongoing series. And of course, people-to-people contact and religion and Buddhism and so on is wonderful. But I think basically the dragon in the room is China. And Japan sees India as the solid wall of the Himalayas that will tell China, remain where you are. Don't you dare mess around. I think that's the biggest thing. And of course, it's only a matter of time. Ambassador Sikri probably knows more than I do. In the next 5 or 10 years, Japan will declare that it's a nuclear power, sir. This is my understanding of what's going on.
Okay, Ambassador Veena Sikri, before I move on to the other part, because I have divided this discussion into essentially 4 parts. The first part is Namaste Tokyo. The second part is the Prime Minister visit to SCO. The third part is the conflicting signals that are coming from Washington, Besson and Navarro. And within 24 hours, 2 people are saying 2 different things. And at last, the resilience of India, and Ernst & Young report saying that by 2038, India can be and shall be the second biggest economy. It came late last night. So your opening statement on India's Prime Minister's visit to Tokyo, Japan, ma'am. And then we move on to the second part of our debate, which is what should we expect when the Prime Minister is going to be in China? To you, madam.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'd like to thank Ambassador Vora for his kind words, totally undeserved. Well, I think that Prime Minister Modi's visit to Japan is significant, very, very significant. He's going there before China. And I think defense and security cooperation is going to top the list. Because, between India and Japan, right way back in 2008, we did sign a declaration on security cooperation. And quietly, there's been a lot of work going on in that area. We've had joint naval exercises. There's a joint working group on defense equipment and technology cooperation. And I think that this time, there's going to be an upgrading of that document. And there's going to be a significantly enhanced statement on defense and security cooperation between India and Japan. And I think this is very important, not only from the point of view of the Indo-Pacific, also from the point of view of the Quad. So Quad or no Quad, India and Japan are going to do their defense and security cooperation together. And there are very significant aspects of this defense and security cooperation. For example, the 2 navies are working together, and I spoke about technology cooperation already. There is a program called Unicorn, which is actually a radio antenna, a highly complex, sort of united complex radio antenna program, which comes on the mast of a ship. And this is for communication and get you the immediate updates, etc. There's going to be a joint India and Japan cooperation on this so that we get the latest technology for our maritime security. I think this is very, very important. Prime Minister is going to visit some semiconductor units as well. So I think in the area of semiconductors, we are going to have further cooperation from Japan. This is very significant because we do know that this whole question of the chips and where to get them is going to be very significant. I think in the economic area, Japan and India have agreed to work together on very, very important projects. Earlier with Bangladesh also, there was a very significant Japan-Bangladesh-India cooperation. I don't know whether that is going to get a further boost. But I do think that Prime Minister Modi's talks in Japan are going to set the tone for the whole region. And it is showing that Japan and India are going to continue the cooperation. And Prime Minister of Japan is going to signal some very important aspects of this during the visit. So I think that all our people are attaching a great deal of significance. Of course, it's important that the regime of annual summit has continued, and this is the 8th visit by our Prime Minister to Japan. Yes. In the last 10 or 11 years. So it just shows the high importance in Asia that is attached to this relationship. And we're going to see some very strong results.
Okay, now let me talk about the Prime Minister Modi's participation at the bigger multilateral platform. In today's turbulent geopolitical times, yes, Prime Minister Modi will meet Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin. For Prime Minister Modi, sharing the stage with both Xi and Putin days after US tariff hits tariff hit sends a strong message of India's multipolar approach. It's also a rejig, it's also in a way a reset, reprioritization, but so be it. This will be his first visit to China in over 7 years, a clear signal of India's readiness to engage despite long-standing border tensions. Xi Jinping will host over 20 important world leaders with 10 permanent members and 16 observers and dialogue partners, and the bloc is increasingly being positioned by Beijing as a counterweight to US-led alliances. On the sidelines of SCO summit, Prime Minister Modi and Xi are expected to discuss de-escalation at the border, trade issues such as supply of rare earth elements, resuming direct flights, and more people-to-people contact. Bilateral meetings with leaders of other SCO member states have also been planned. Plus on 3rd September, though it is not part of this discussion, something important is going to happen because there is going to be a grand military parade in Beijing, and Vladimir Putin, Kim, the President of Iran, President of Indonesia, and Leader of Assembly of South Korea will be present, and not one leader from the West will be part of that military parade in Beijing. So that's also important. This development on 3rd of September, the shape or the face of the new alliance which is there will be very much evident on 3rd of September in Beijing. Now let me straight away go to Mr. Garg. Mr. Garg, a very quick question to you. Is it possible to decouple India's economy from China in context of our dependence on rare earths, magnets, so many other products on which our industries thrive? For example, there's a great initiative on, one small example, on e-vehicles in India, but we get our entire magnets from China. They can't survive without, getting these magnets imported from there. Is that decoupling possible, sir?
I didn't hear your first part of your remarks, but I assume your question is about India-China
decoupling of commerce.
Decoupling of commerce between
India and China, our dependence on them.
Or recoupling, you're saying?
I said decoupling. Decoupling.
We are already decoupled quite a lot. I think the idea is to recouple. Anyway, let me sort of give you the kind of the way I see the economic imperative between India and China. I think there are a couple of issues which are very clear. How do we deal with our trade dependence on China, especially for the new industrial economy products, whether it is EV or whether it is solar cells or whether it is the computers, etc. That is one aspect. We can't do without that import. That's what translates into $100 billion of deficit with China. We also have very critical dependence on certain things, which you mentioned about the rare earth magnets and quite even for fertilizers and many other things. We have very big dependence, even for, let's say, batteries. If the Chinese, which control 85% of the supply of battery cells, if they do something on that front, even batteries production all over the world, including India, suffers. So that is one level of how do we sort of resolve it. The other one is our own little bit of self-imposed kind of restrictions. We have not allowed Chinese investment to come. Without investment in these new technology areas, we can't really make good progress with China. China is very keen, and it might, in my analysis, be better to make Chinese invest and us to get better control, including participation of our labor and other raw material and other things into the production rather than importing. So that's, I think, the second one. And third one, which I think will flows, while SCO provides a kind of platform, it is the real coupling of the two other partners, which is the Russia and the Brazil in BRICS. How does, with China virtually leading the BRICS now, how do we deal with that? So this is very important visit from this. I hope we have a very long history of very high level of distrust about China. Shall we be able to overcome that? The times have come perhaps to revisit that. But if we are not able to overcome, then the progress in sort of restoring the relationship with China, or in a way to combine with China to deal with the US is unlikely to happen. I am not recommending this in any case, but if we want to do business, this is investment instead of imports is something of a strategy to go for.
Okay, Ambassador Vora, because we also remember that the Chinese engineers from the factory, Foxconn factories, they were called back midway.
So, sir, may I ask you a question to all the wonderful people here? Let's assume we are sitting in Beijing and there are Chinese experts. What do you think they'll say? Oh, we love India. Let's go and invest there. Would they? I'm not sure. We are very nice, say, we need Chinese investment, darling, bhai, behan, whatever. Take it from me, sir, those guys have no love for us. And all this nonsense that Ping Pong is talking about, it's pure exploitation of the Indian market because he has no other market. His domestic market, they've never developed. Europe doesn't buy from him. Shri McDonald Trump will not buy from him. He has to come to me. So it's nothing that suddenly there's epiphany and a change of heart. My family was orphaned in 1962, sir. We are very sensitive about this, about what happened. I just came back from Rizangla also when I was in Leh. So the issue here, sir, to my mind, is look at it from their perspective. What do they want from India? I know what I want from China. Get out of my border areas. They are mine. And what does he want? I want all of India. I want you to be subservient. Therefore, with all the 19 neighbors that he has problems. He has problems with ego and anger management. So Prime Minister going there is great. We'll shake hands. Lovely photo op. And you'll pay me money to come and spurt as an expert on your channel. Great, wonderful. But in reality, I don't think anything is going to change. I don't know if Ambassador Sikri agrees with me or not. She's far more intelligent than I am. This is my assessment. The great, see the photo op on your screen right now, shaking hands, hugging each other, etc. And then what? After a month, it's all forgotten.
This is nothing. My score has 5 stars. तेरे को पता है मेरी स्कोर ना ऑटोमेटिक है और वो भी 7 स्पीड. कुछ भी. Hello guys. My Skoda can fly to Jupiter like a rocket.
Skoda.
SCO condoms?
It's over there.
क्या ये different sizes में आता है?
Actually, sir, size matter नहीं करता.
तो फिर क्या matter करता है?
The hardness
of the condom.
Of what's inside.
For the first time ever, presenting Hard Rock Gel.
अब free हर SCO condoms के 10 pack के साथ.
Best है sir.
पर नया क्यों?
Architect जी, something special for you. बिरला ओपस अश्योरेंस देने के लिए.
ऐसा क्या है इसमें?
इसमें है एडवांस क्वालिटी. 1 साल में पेंट को कुछ भी हुआ तो पेंटिंग वापस करके देंगे.
वापस करके देंगे.
वो भी फ्री. क्वालिटी पे इतना कॉन्फिडेंस, इसीलिए बिरला ओपस अश्योरेंस. रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर.
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है. आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया. तुझको जो मैं हो जाऊं पागल.
Love makes you go the distance. Unlimited Love. The B6 Pack 2 starts at 21.9 lakh.
So are you Ambassador Sikri, so are you saying that after Wuhan and if I'm not wrong, Mamallapuram, one thing is very clear that Xi Jinping as a person is not invested in this process, is this correct? And it's just boiling down to management of hostilities when it comes to India and China. Is that the approach?
Well, I think if you look back at it, Prime Minister Modi has tried his best to build a relationship of trust with China. He did try right from 2014 onwards, and we do know that President Xi Jinping was almost the first global dignitary to visit India, and then he was in Ahmedabad. But after 2020, what happened there in Galwan, I think that has completely broken the trust between India and China, because it was a complete break of all the agreements that India and China had agreed on peace and tranquility and all of that. And this was completely, and there was supposed to be no use of violence, and they brought these clubs which don't look like violence, but they had all these barbed wire and things stuck on them, which was very absolutely injurious to anybody who was at the other end. So and they thought this was, I think Xi Jinping was doing it for his internal political reasons. He wanted to show his control of the army. He wanted to show that he could do what he liked with India. He got a very rude answer. He was completely shocked and they have not tried anything like that again. Now, after that, when this complete trust had broken down because of that, I think we have seen, as you said, after 7 years now, Prime Minister is going. We are in keeping with our policy of multipolarity and strategic autonomy. We are willing to go look at the multilateral organizations like SCO, for which our Prime Minister is going for the summit, and BRICS, and we are working hard in those organizations to see whether regionally you can establish some trust. But I can say that the bilateral talks, one round was held in Kazan last year in October, which was really the breaking of the ice between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. This is a continuation of that process, and Wang Yi was in India very recently. He met with EM, Dr. Jaishankar, and NSA, Mr. Ajit Doval, and he called on Prime Minister Modi as well, which is unusual for only very few foreign ministers are given the right to call on Prime Minister Modi. So this is a mutual rebuilding, but I think there should be no illusions that it's going to be a sudden coming back. Trust, what they say about trust, that it's like fragile porcelain. Once broken, it can be repaired, but the crack is always there, So
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that building of trust process, China needs us, no doubt. They have their very keen interest in us, but we are being very cautious about it. And certainly with the whole this tariff factor upending the global economies, even China is very willing to and wanting to. They've called, Mr. Trump, President Trump, a bully, and the whole tariff process is a bully. They've been saying all these things, And in the last time when Wang Yi was here, they for the first time used the term multipolarity in their readout of the meetings that Wang Yi had in India. So obviously they are also looking at new aspects. Their trust in what they're going to get with USA is different, but there is no doubt that President Trump is very keen to have a deal with China. There is no doubt at all about that for President Trump, his first priority is his deal with China. He's throwing every country under the bus, including India, just to get that deal that he wants with China.
Okay.
It hasn't worked so far, and we have to see whether it will work, but they are, playing off each other.
Okay, so Professor Swaran Singh, where does this put India?
I think India over a period of time has, carved out a very special niche area for itself, partly because it is seen as the fastest growing among major economies, so it's on the upswing in that sense. We have a very hyperactive leadership in foreign policy, both at the level of Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. And in that sense, India is able to so far maintain that unique position of being both in quadrilateral security dialogue and in BRICS and potentially in Russia, China, India strategic triangle. And I think in that sense, what I notice is there is no need for trust to be there to do transactions. I mean, in spite of those tensions for 5 years on the border with heavy deployments on both sides, Indian and India-China trade was shooting up, went all the way to $136 billion. And Chinese, to answer Ambassador Bora's question, will be very happy to invest in India. That gives them access and a finger in the pie in that sense. So they are going to be very excited if you ask them in Beijing, would you like to invest in India? India is relatively much safer than investing in Cambodia, Pakistan, or some of the more dangerous areas like Sri Lanka, etc. So their approach to life is very transactional, and I think most major powers see their foreign policy increasingly transactional. And in that sense, doing business is something that both sides will continue to explore. Okay. And in case that helps in trust building, good.
Basically, you're saying you don't need to be friends to do business. Okay, you don't need to be friends to do business. But Professor Rajan Kumar, it's an adjacent question, but indeed it needs to be addressed in this conversation. It seems that the SCO has gobbled up the SAARC areas in terms of representation.
And I don't think so, because SCO does not have the. If I understood your question correctly, you are saying it has gobbled up the SAARC area. SAARC
nation, the representation, Pakistan.
Well, not really, because the The purpose of the two organizations are completely different. Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as you know, is a, yes, of course, Chinese-led organization. The term Shanghai is also the first term, as you know, is a Shanghai city. But this organization, in my perspective, is actually a Eurasian organization. Eurasia, and the focus is on Central Asia, let me tell you. Although there are other countries like China, Russia, there's Pakistan, India, Iran, etc. But the focus is primarily in Shanghai Cooperation Organization on the issues of Central Asia, and they call it three evils. This is known as separatism, terrorism, and secessionism.
So but they have failed on terrorism. Rajnath Singh didn't sign last time around when.
Yes. So I can, if you allow me. So yes,
sure.
The agreement, the joint declaration, India didn't sign it, but the same, this was pursued further, and in the BRICS declaration, the issue came up, where it was clearly in the BRICS statement, in the joint statement, the cross-border terrorism without mentioning Pakistan came. So it's a process. What I'm trying to say, do not expect that China will support you on the issue of terrorism. Do not expect Pakistan will support you on the issue of terrorism. But building up a consensus, some kind of understanding is necessary, and the fact that we also need to send a message to United States at this point of time. So you'll have to strengthen your cooperation with the countries of the global south. Yes, you don't have to, our interest does not have to converge with all the interest of all the countries. We have divergences with China, with Pakistan, with other countries also. But yes, there are certain areas of agreement, and Shanghai Cooperation Organization is essentially a security organization. Let's not say that too many economic cooperation or energy cooperation will take. So what I see that there's a kind of messaging here, the symbolic, and also some substantial, in the sense that Prime Minister is going after a long time. Let me tell you that India was not very active in Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the last few years. In the previous meeting, Pakistan, India Prime Minister didn't go. In the previous meeting, 2023, when India was to host this meeting, it converted into a virtual summit. So India was not very keen. So, but if Indian Prime Minister is going to China at this point of time, so it's essentially he's trying to send a message to United States.
Absolutely. So the consensus here is that the expectations must be moderated. But this meeting is happening at a time when this country, at least the domestic politics, so the people at large, have developed an appetite for foreign news, which was not there 20 years ago when I joined this profession in 1998, or even before when I was a student. But in the last 10-15 years, people want to know about the world. People want to hear from the diplomats. People want to hear more about the security. It's a paradigm shift that has also taken place in journalism, in a larger public narrative, where people want to absorb, consume, understand, and talk about foreign policy, not only politics but foreign policy. So let me move on to the third part of it, and this is an important part. It really surprised me. I went off to sleep thinking, well, this is a positive development, and when I got up in the morning and I thought, well, what happened in last 8 hours? Because I realized that the Washington is speaking in a forked tongue. On one hand, its Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, is saying India and the United States will come together at the end of the day. And on the other hand, Peter Navarro is saying that Ukraine is Modi's war. So let me read out what Scott said. He said, this is a very complicated relationship. President Trump or Prime Minister, which is Narendra Modi, have very good relationship at that level. And at the end of the day, we will come together. US Treasury Secretary. Now, this is Peter Navarro. He says everybody in America loses because of what India is doing. Consumers, businesses, workers lose because India's high tariffs cost us jobs and factories and income and higher wages. And then the taxpayers lose because we've got to fund Modi's war. This is Peter Navarro, White House Trade Advisor. Ambassador Sikri, can you just please decode it for us? I mean to say, it's like Piyush Goyal and Rajnath Singh addressing the same issue together, one at 9 p.m. and another at 7 a.m. in morning, and saying two different things.
Well, I think the state we are at right now, it does seem that President Trump is looking for some kind of a deal with India. We do know that after months of negotiations, India and USA were very close to a deal. And in fact, the US trade representative had taken a text of a deal to President Trump, but he turned it down at that time and brought in this whole aspect of 25% additional tariffs for purchase of oil from Russia. But I think India has been so firm and absolutely straightforward in its position that we are not going to give up on our right for a purchase of Russian oil. We have drawn 3 red lines that we will not give up under trade and tariffs agreement with USA, we will not give up on the rights of the Indian farmers, rights of the Indian fishermen, and rights of the micro and small entrepreneurs. And we will not give up on our right to buy Russian oil. This is our sovereign right. And we will not accept third-party mediation for India and Pakistan. These three lines we are very firm on. I think President Trump has seen that. He wants to do a deal. In the last 2 days, there is news coming that 4 times President Trump has tried to speak to Prime Minister Modi, but Prime Minister Modi has very correctly declined to speak. Secondly, there was a rumor that the President of Finland, who telephoned our Prime Minister, actually he's a very good friend of President Trump, and he may have carried a message from President Trump to our Prime Minister. So I would see the modified statement by the Secretary of the Treasury in that light, because earlier the same Secretary of the Treasury had made a much harsher statement, and now he sort of moderated it. And they know that, because they know when our leaders and when our Prime Minister said in Parliament, and Dr. Jaishankar has said all over the world, China is buying more oil than us from Russia. Turkey is possibly buying more oil than us from Russia. The European Union is buying, and America itself is doing trade of some $5 to $6 billion a year on uranium, palladium, titanium, and all kinds of other stuff, including fertilizers. Why on earth are they putting this as a conditionality for India? So that extra 25% tariffs is really something that will not wash.
Okay.
And India is not going to give in on that. I just want to add one word about this question of trust. I think that, it's easy to say there's never any trust in bilateral relationships. Any businessman, they are a group of all a deal, you need that trust factor. You cannot conclude a business deal. So I trust the bottom line. If it breaks, there is a problem.
Professor Swaran Singh, I think that was for you, sir.
Clearly, I think we can then perhaps, I respect Ambassador Sikri's views, but I think we are talking here of different kinds and different levels of trust. Whether we are talking of the political trust at the apex level leadership on both sides, or is it trust at the transactional level, that a transaction which is agreed upon will be carried forward unless circumstances change drastically. And China itself is a great example. It has biggest problem with Taiwan, with Japan, with United States. They are the largest trading partners of China. And I gave example of India and China trade going up while tension on the border coexisting. So yes, trust is good and it facilitates cooperation and collaborations, but transactions can happen even when the trust is not there, is what I'm underlining. And transactions sometimes collectively, cumulatively lead to building of trust. So to me, the fact that United States, for example, has a very different sense of running, for example, when it comes to supporting Ukraine, fighting the war against Russia, or within India's Chinese opponent, you sector, but you constantly also work together in other sectors, and this relationship is relatively distinct compared to the United States. So, that Prime Minister's visit there, which is primarily a multilateral visit, is going to lead to meetings with President, meetings with Xi Jinping, and it is in that sense reviving the old triangle of three countries together. Same thing the way it happened during President Trump. 2018, 2019, there were 3 summit meetings of Russia, India, China leaders, same leaders at that time also. Now, with a bigger dose, I think they are, going to come much closer together, and I think that is a kind of a symbolism that we will see coming out of Tianjin, with complete understanding that there are issues between Russia and China. There are still major issues between India and China, despite all the normalization process which is going on. So trust and distrust actually sometimes coexist. And we have heard it many times, there are no permanent friends, there are always permanent interests only. So trust is good if it is there, but I think the ideal type trust is only a utopia.
Okay, let me ask you, Ambassador Sikri, is tariff policy a fallout of the larger foreign policy of the US administration, or their foreign policy is a fallout of what Trump thinks on tariff, ma'am?
Trump, even during his first term, there is, I saw this somewhere in the write-up, that he was actually had some idea on tariff, and he said, who should I talk to about it? He asked his son-in-law to get him a good economist, and his son-in-law invited Peter Navarro. Now, Peter Navarro was not even known before that as being a trade expert, and he had been writing these books, quoting somebody called Ron Varro, an economist called Ron Varro, who has said this, that, and the other. And that Ron Varro turned out to be a non-existent person. It was just an anagram of Navarro, Peter Navarro's name. Navarro made Ron Varro. So I think that this whole idea and now, of course, you have Peter Navarro saying all these nasty things about India, which he has no right to say at all, because it is not at all true that it is Indian purchases of. It's America who asked India to start purchasing Russian oil so to keep the global price market under control and without it letting it shoot out of the box. So I think that that this whole situation within America, the Trump policy of tariffs is backfiring. It's backfiring badly. People are losing jobs. Prices are going up. Everybody, Walmart raising their price stickers enormously. It's going to take a month or two to find out exactly what the impression is. People are not consuming. They're not going to buy, and it's hitting the economy badly. So Trump is finding a way out now, and he's trying to find a solution. They'll say, okay, give me a reason. I'll stop the tariffs.
Okay.
It's going to work like that.
Okay. Now let me move towards the last segment of our conversation, and this is a report by Ernst & Young. It says that India's economy could reach 20.7 trillion in terms of purchasing power parity, PPP, by 2030 and may emerge as the second largest economy by 2038 with 34.2 trillion GDP. With appropriate countermeasures, India can limit adverse impact of high US tariffs on selected exports to about 10 basis points of real GDP growth. India is emerging as one of the most dynamic among the world's 5 largest economies with strong fundamentals, which the Ernst & Young Economy Watch Out report added. Now, Ambassador Vora, Professor Swaran Singh, and Ambassador Veena Sikri, my question remains one. There have been a lot of achievements post 2014. But there has been one area of concern which a lot of economists and people in the world of finance have written about: second generation of economic reforms post 1991. Those need to happen. So first I'll go to Professor Swaran Singh. Sir, do you think we still have the political appetite for those second generation of reforms that are still pending?
Thank you. If you look at the history, we have undertaken fundamental restructuring often when we are pushed to the wall.
Yeah.
The biggest example is early 1990s.
Yes.
And I think the similar kind of push is already in place. There is an incremental, regular, off-the-cuff discussions of need for restructuring, need to do deeper reforms. But that actually takes place when push comes to shove in that sense. And I think this is a similar moment, if not as severe as early 1990s position of defaulting payments.
That was a precipice.
And the second important plus point is the decisive leadership that we have today, and also the whole upswing in your economic trajectories. You just mentioned one more foreign assessment showcasing the trends in India's economic growth rates, which should provide greater confidence that India can undertake even deeper and would need actually to do deeper reforms in terms of structural reforms, so that we can accelerate the pace and scale of India's productivity. Make in India and manufacturing is something that needs really primary focus and has been the focus of the current leadership. But then once you take the kind of push even deeper in terms of how you want to reform the structures where you can ensure productivity is increased in terms of trade laws, in terms of trade facilitation, in terms of labor laws, in terms of all sorts of inputs that go into the production also to be made easier in terms of being brought into the country, and how you want to create all kinds of other special economic zones, and PIL scheme is already in place. So I think we are in a similar situation where one could see leadership focusing and taking decisive actions in that sense. So if India has to really go beyond 5 trillion economy, something has to fundamentally change, and we have seen that in case of China, for example. So if we are talking of taking India all the way to 15 trillion and 20 trillion economy in 2030, 2035 and so on,
Okay.
those kind of structural reforms are not a matter of choice.
Okay. I'm also joined by Colin Chong, Master in European Studies, Foreign Affairs, Strategy and Security at the University of Malaya. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me. You know, you have joined me at the fag end of my program, so I'll come to you first. You know, we were discussing the Ernst & Young report saying that India can be, as per the estimate, can be the second biggest economy. Do you think that these tariffs have opened up the new possibilities? Yes, it's going to be like tough love, but by end of the day, we might diversify and create new markets, cheaper, credit lines, better structured taxes, and far more integrated with other parts of the world. For it's like Southeast Asia.
Sure. It's part of the continuation of the new reforms and strategic outlook by Prime Minister Modi. We have seen how the Act East policy has now, given a lot of this positive impact not only to India but also to nations in Southeast Asia. We have seen how the ties between Southeast Asian nations with India have improved, and of course also on various aspects, including on security, economic aspects, as well as people-to-people relations. And the upcoming visit to Japan is a critical moment for both countries, as both will seek to enhance bilateral ties, especially in the security and defense domains. Of course, also in the new sectors of future-driven economic advancement, including on AI, critical minerals, semiconductor supply chain, food security, digital economy, clean energy, and all that. So we have seen how both countries are intertwined with this common aspiration to enhance, this regional spirit of cooperation, especially also in sending a very critical message to the other big powers, to both China and the US, that despite the tariff move and despite also these new geopolitical challenges with China, both countries have been on the same path towards consolidating their partnerships, not only in the mechanism of court, but also in bilateral ties.
Colin, in 1991, when Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister, India had a Look East policy. Then with Prime Minister Modi, we had an Act East policy. We have a Kaladan project. But despite that, the integration with the Southeast Asian economies have not taken place. What have been the hindrances and what are the possibilities?
We have seen how the conventional economic dependence in terms of this Southeast Asian economies have been very much on these two traditional powers, both the US and China. So of course, they are very much reliant on the US market and US investments in new technologies. At the same time, they're also very reliant on the Chinese market in terms of also Chinese investment in the region. So India in that part has been sidelined for the most of the years that we have seen now over the past few decades. But with this new venture and this new pivot to Southeast Asia, to East Asia, there's this new renewal, the spirit of new awareness, and the understanding of Southeast Asian nations of the importance of India and the rise of India, and not only in terms of the conventional dependence on food security, on digital economy, but also on these new sectors that they are coming out, especially also in terms of how India has been playing a new role in the this path towards a free and open Indo-Pacific, the rules-based order, and also promoting peace and stability in Southeast Asia, especially also in these flashpoints in this region. So in that sense, I can see that despite the limitations of ASEAN, certain individual countries have been very much open and reliant now on the importance of India beyond the domains of traditional economic and people-to-people ties, but also increasingly towards the conventional hard power areas with regards to defense and security.
Colin, wait with you. Ambassador Sikri, we've had a policy of getting ourselves integrated with Southeast Asia, but it hasn't functioned very well. In your opinion, why? I remember, I think 2017 or 2018, I traveled all the way from Imphal to More and crossed into Myanmar and then came back. It was allowed. FMR was there. And then, I was told that this is the Kaladan project we are building, and, the whole idea was to, take your car, travel all the way to Thailand and Vietnam. It hasn't happened. Why, madam?
Well, I think the situation in Myanmar has been a huge complicating factor because the Kaladan multimodal project has now been really held up because the situation in Myanmar last 4 years has been very, very difficult. And the internal strife has meant that traveling through, and especially by road, and freedom of movement has been very difficult. Even control of areas within Myanmar is not known very much. I think our Act East policy, also there's a problem that because of the, as panelist from Malaysia has said, that because of their dependence on China and US, they have not been so forthcoming in looking at India.
Okay.
And the India-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement hasn't worked very well, because we found that through that free trade agreement, number of third country products were coming in. So, value added, countries of origin, those issues have not been ironed out properly enough. And that is why, that's one of the reasons, because the India-ASEAN FTA did not work so well, that we are now looking much more at bilateral FTAs and thinking that we can work much better bilaterally than with this multilateral FTA, which has a lot of loopholes on different types. This has been one of the reasons. But I must come back to your earlier question about the kind of reforms that we need based on what Ernst & Young report is there. And I think that process reforms has already started, because the decision on the GST, for example, to cut the GST rates from 4 slabs to 2 slabs, and for bringing it down from 28% to 18% and 12% to 5%. So you only have 5% and 18%. So this is going to release a whole lot of additional finances for consumer expenditure, because each person who has been paying GST will now have more money in their pocket. And so the consumer demand will go up. And I do think that this is going to be a big factor in India's continued growth rate, because India is the only country in the world, including China, which has such a sharply expanding domestic consumer market. The Chinese domestic consumer market is on the downswing. It's coming down, and China, despite their best efforts to increase domestic consumption to compensate for the shortfall in exports, they've not been able to do it, and so their economy is faltering, whereas India's economy is very much on the rise. And I think also that secondly, our government has taken a very strong series of steps to help the individual sectors who are hurt by the tariffs. Whether it is jewelry, whether it is so on, and all this is going to help them. They're going to be allowed to sell in India. There's a reduction in tariff on many goods. In fact, even in negotiating the India-US FTA, we have reduced tariffs on many goods.
Absolutely, madam. Absolutely, madam. Colin, your closing comment, do you think that there's a great potential between India and the Southeast Asian economy, Malaysia, Indonesia, the entire area?
Absolutely. We have seen how, these new ventures, new diplomatic maneuvers in terms of economic friendshoring and defense friendshoring efforts have now taken a deep root in the region, and this new wave of realization that in this quest for the region to move away from this conventional power rivalry between Washington and Beijing, now they see that India is the needed third force in power, which has been overlooked all the while. And that with this new initiative, we have Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, we have SEGAR by India. And also, of course, the new economic opening of India under Modi. We have seen how the digital economy has grown exponentially, more than 2 to 3 times faster than the economy between the period of 2014 and 2019. So this new wave of optimism, I think, has given a new fresh hope to the region that India is the needed rising force, not only in economic terms but also in terms of providing this stability in defense and security to the region, which is very much in need now by all regional nations.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Ambassador Sikri. I've really run short of time. Thank you for making time for my show, because this show is about the problems which India faces, but what the country makes of it, and the problem and the crisis has created new possibilities for better growth and for a brighter future. So this is all I had on Point today. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you and good night.